I'm going to introduce Jamie. So,
okay.
Jamie Rhodes he works for Upstream. What is exactly your title?
Program director.
Program director at Upstream Policy. They work on the national and international scale on systemic solutions to waste problems, specifically plastic. We're lucky that Jamie lives right here in Rhode Island, so I'm often in contact with him for some perspective, some larger perspective on single-use plastic and waste policy. He also previously held my job, so he is no stranger to these types of things. So thank you, Jamie.
Thanks. All right, so it looks like we're up. Thank you all very much. There's a lot of thank yous going around, so I'll throw my thank you into the ring here. And thanks for the privilege and the opportunity to be in front of you today to talk really about an issue that has been, let's just say, my professional endeavor for the last 3 years. So I'm still new to the issue. There's a lot to understand in 3 years, but I appreciate a task force coming together to talk about the thing that has motivated me to get up in the morning, go into the office, and put my time and energy into solving a problem. So to my friends and colleagues, it's great to see a lot of you again. Some of us we haven't caught up in a while, and I look forward to doing that more. And for those of you that I haven't met, I'm going to give you just a little brief thing about myself so you know why I'm up here in front of you anyway. So as I said, Jamie Rhodes, I'm the program director at Upstream, and I do live down in Warwick. I live not far from Rocky Point. My kid just started elementary school, so I am frazzled all the time. He just started kindergarten, so I was just telling Julia this morning, I've missed more meetings since he started kindergarten than I have in the last decade. I didn't realize what happens to schedules when this happens. My wife lives in Warwick. She has a business in Warwick as well. It's a podcasting company. So if any of you have questions about podcasts or podcast recommendations, grab me afterwards. I could spend 20 minutes up here talking about that as well. Let's just say it's a really exciting, exciting field. But aside from myself, what Upstream does is that, this is it. We believe that there's a better way. What we can imagine a better way, but we're going to be able to create it. And with this specifically, what I mean is there's a better way than single use, and there's a better way than disposability as a cornerstone of our economy. So we can create something different. So I'll be spending a bit of time today just kind of sharing Upstream's motivation for why we believe this, as well as hopefully I'm able to spark a little bit of your imagination on where we could go and the possibility that's ahead of us. And it's one where there's a million unremarkable things that you do every day. A million of them. Thousands of, maybe thousands, I don't know, the day's not that long. So there's 1,000 of individual unremarkable things you do every day. From drinking coffee, eating food, getting a snack for the kids, washing your hair in the morning, and we can reflect a different set of values in each one of these things by changing one unremarkable thing into what seems remarkable. And we want to move from a society where we create, consume, and throw away to one where we create, reuse, create, use, create, reuse, and on and on and on. And I see that your task here as this task force is to help provide a guide for us. How do we get to a different world? How do we get to a different future? One that looks different, one that feels different. But as always, that's upside down. I want to start with a little story. Everyone familiar with Ellie's Bakery? Yeah.
That was my
I bet you you're there every day.
On the way here.
It's right across the street from Providence City Hall, if you haven't been there. So once again, I live in Warwick. I work out of my home office, so I'm kind of like a shut-in sometimes. But I very often get an exciting trip of taking the bus into Providence. It's so big, it's so exciting. You get to go to the big city for a day. But often, I take a bus that gets me there early. Most people don't meet before 9 o'clock. I get that. My bus always gets me there early. And I like to dip into that. I really do. And I remember actually a specific day, maybe it's not specific, it's probably an amalgamation of days, where I was probably going to see Leah at City Hall. And I think it was about March this year. It was kind of cold, a little rainy, drizzly out. So they got the doors closed. And I remember kind of hopping up and going over to Ellie's and opening the door. And I see this spread of baked goods before me. And I have this soft spot for fluffy croissants. They're just so good. And I also get hit by this embracing aroma of coffee, which is also another weak spot. So if we had a coffee brewing in here, I'd be like, yeah, screw this. I gotta go drink some of that. I gotta
Jamie, I
inhale
haven't
this.
had lunch yet.
Really? It's like 1:30. Well, guess what? You were about to be hungrier when I am done with this.
But Helen is on my board, so keep it up.
Okay. She doesn't know I'm making a pitch for her,
Well,
but
I'm going to tell
you
her.
can let her know. So I thought, like this particular morning, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to go in there and see some of those baked goods, get a chance to sample it. And they have this wonderful thing up there. They got this little coffee menu up on the wall. It makes me, when I go, I don't know about the rest of you, but I generally have a habit of ordering the same thing. I bring my thermos and I get black coffee and I put it in that thermos and I drink it for the next 17 hours. That's usually my go-to. But I like going to a restaurant like this where they got a little coffee menu for me. I'm like, I should change things up a little bit. I should do this a little bit differently today. Maybe I could have a macchiato or a latte or an Americano. It's amazing. There's so many things. And they illustrated it for me. It's so wonderful. And so that morning, I definitely got macchiato, which I never drink. I still to this day couldn't actually tell you what's in it. It says it up there. I'm not quite sure what it says. And I believe I got a chocolate croissant because that's one of my favorites. And I sat down, once again, about 20 minutes ago. I sip on that macchiato, eat that fluffy croissant, listen to that bustle around me, people actually doing like work things as I'm just people watching and waiting for a little bit of time to pass. This is just when I am done with that little restaurant experience. I bust out my tray. I bust my cup and my saucer. I put the tray away. I wash my hands, and I run across the street probably for Leah to tell me what I'm supposed to do for her next. But the interesting part about that 10 minutes there, besides it being like a whole 10 minutes of safety for myself, I'm like, this is wonderful. It was also, to me, my own little 10-minute throwaway free zone. In that experience, I'm sitting down there having a cup of coffee. I get to hear those clink of the glasses. I get to bust my dishes. And for those 10 minutes, that was it. That's all I had. And then I put my dishes away and I walk away. It seems totally unremarkable. And it's a completely normal experience. But I'm sure there will be talks and conversations today about the thousands and the millions of different ways that this could be different. Where there's where there's a single-use disposable cups while you sit there, while there's a rash of napkins and paper plates that's everywhere. And so I wish I could say that my experience there was the norm, but I can't. And somehow I am the remarkable one for having a different dining experience, when what I want us to try to create is where mine's normal. That's the normal thing that we do, is that we don't create trash, that we don't create waste. While we still get the things that we need, and like a chocolate croissant, a whole lot of those things that we just really want. So the disposable does not have to be our path. There's examples like this that are everywhere that I know that we can create. And so that's a little bit of positivity. I know John asked me to come up to talk a little bit more about the bigger question about plastics. So if you don't like sad things, I would recommend closing your eyes for about 5-10 minutes. And then I'll come back to some happier things afterwards. But I wanted to take this experience of what we could be to thinking a little bit more of what our current experience is now. I can't forget this article. This is an article from March 2014. And for anybody who's been involved in the CSO project, any takers on that? It's been really fun. Big holes under the ground to hold stormwater. When they were connecting a new spur or something like that back in 2014, they closed it down, emptied it out, so they got an inspection. Jumped down the 26 feet, spelunking in man-made caves below. And you know what they said? This place is covered in single-use plastic items, from bottles to jars to bags. And I'm going to pull my there. This is what's down there. Now, I recognize that they said, no, it's not going to be a problem with the operations of the CSO, all that plastic down there, it's not a problem. But it's definitely noteworthy. And so, to me, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is something that we don't see everything that's down below our feet, but apparently the plastic got there, and it hasn't stopped since they opened the CSO. There's more plastic now than there was 5 years ago, without a doubt. And we don't know the impact of that. But more importantly, beyond the impact, I doubt that's what we intended the CSO to be, is a holding tank for single-use plastic. That's a really expensive holding tank. I've seen the numbers that we've used to pay for that. And you know what, and, Jonathan's here, so he's got better copies of this. I just plucked a couple of pages out from the International Coastal Cleanup. There's been many efforts to mitigate the harm and to raise awareness about the problems of plastic pollution. And once again, this just gives there's just a little snippet of the amount of trash that we are able to pick up off of our coastlines and what it is. Now, once again, yes, Jonathan, keep doing this, and I think we can do better with efforts like this. I think we need, my personal belief is that just figuring out what we're collecting is not enough. I believe we also need to figure out who is creating that stuff so that we know where the source is. And this allows us to connect both with where the plastic begins as well as where it ends on our coastline. And so this is just a little bit of like, you are going to be inundated in about a week, at least through your social media, if people are good at this, with Greenpeace is doing, instead of the International Coastal Cleanup, they're doing their own brand audits. So over 6 continents, couple hundred, I think it's like 400 some cleanups, thousands of volunteers. They're doing a similar set of cleanups, but they're auditing the data of whose brands, what are the brands that are creating the stuff that we're seeing most often. And I just think that's accountability. Accountability is not just on us as people that are litter bugs and quote unquote litter bugs that are dropping our items in the wrong place or getting it blown out of a trash can. Accountability includes everyone that's involved in the system. That's creating the more packaging that we see. This is packaging that we don't necessarily want, but we don't often need, and most often we definitely don't want. And so we need to ensure that the costs that are being created by this are being borne, and some of these costs are measured in like damaged health, degraded environments, and the quality of life isn't just being felt by the few, the people that are in the sacrifice zones that we've created in this country, but that the cost and the accountability for this extends far beyond. And then it goes down up and down the whole supply chain. So I originally, when I was going to do this, I had a little video clip that I was going to share. Because one of the things I've been asked to bring home here is that we see a bit of plastic, but we don't see the whole story of plastic in our lives and where we are. So I wanted to share a little clip of, this is Juan Perez who started TEJAS, Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services, and this is Yvette, one of the staff that works there. I was going to let her tell her story about what it's like to live where the plastic is created in this country, since I think that's an important connection. But I can't play the video clip, so I'm going to ask you to maybe like close your eyes a little bit and imagine me as her. I'm going to do my best, so indulge me for a minute. I am going to essentially do a table read for you. So I apologize. Well in advance. So once again, this is Yvette. She lives in Houston, and her work is to advocate on behalf of the communities that face the build-out of petrochemical and plastics facilities in Houston. The east end of Houston, all the way to Baytown, there's almost a pattern. You have a refinery, a park, a school. A refinery, a park, a school. A chemical plant that has a huge amount of green space next to it, and it's usually across from neighborhoods. Then a refinery, a park, a school. A storage facility, a park, a neighborhood. Most of the industry along the Houston Ship Channel is a chemical complex. They're chemical clusters. These chemicals are used for products, for plastic products. And I don't think most people know that. Chemicals cause health issues to the respiratory system, to the neurological system, cardiovascular systems. Community members in these areas are constantly reporting health issues in terms of breathing, headaches, and nosebleeds. Most people here want to talk. Most people here want to talk. They want to speak. But they have no idea. They have been living here their whole lives. And I had no idea I was being exposed to X chemical for years and that it was having an effect on me, on my health, or on my children. I had never looked at the refinery as urgent. I would want someone who goes into a store to look at a plastic product to know that poor rural communities with no resources are experiencing the fracking. I want them to know that it took a pipeline, an 18-wheeler to cross through a community. Because there is no 18-wheeler traffic in the nice communities. That it's being transported and it's being refined and it's causing everything from contamination to groundwater to pipeline leaks and spills from point A to point B. And that when it gets over to our communities, that the same raw material is being processed, letting off toxic fumes and is shortening the lifespan of people, that is shortening the lifespan of children. Because folks that live in these communities who have suffered the impacts have never seen one tear, never seen $1, never seen one organizer in their communities trying to stop the toxic health impacts. Now, it's empowering to hear her voice. I mean, mostly because I met her and she took me through these neighborhoods to see this as I sought to find out what is the story that I've gone down, like what is this process I'm embarking on. In trying to address plastics, we had to know what the source was. And to hear from somebody living in those communities about the impact on her family, on her children, not her children, but the children in the neighborhood, it sticks with me as she drove me through these neighborhoods and communities. I can still smell the air because it smells sweet. It smells like something I've eaten before. And that's just what's being emitted from the plastics refineries. And I will not forget that smell or the headache I had afterwards. And so if you want to hear Yvette's story, once again, the Story of Stuff project put together that interview. I've linked to it that you can be shared, as well as you can find it on the Story of Stuff Facebook page. I encourage you all to listen to it and hear these words from her voice to know that we're at the end of the pipeline that also begins in her backyard. But while I can still hear Yvette's story, I just want to try to paint that picture a little bit about how that plastic comes to us. I'm not sure how many people dig into where plastic comes from and how it gets here, but I'm going to do a snapshot, and I apologize, I'm not a chemist, so any of the individual pieces of that I butcher, you can totally hold me accountable for that. But as you know, it starts with natural gas. It's pulled out of the ground. It's transported by pipelines. These are pipelines that have been built by taking people's private land. They pose a health and environmental threat to the land on which they are built. The natural gas is refined. It's transported natural gas to refineries. At those refineries, natural gas, it's refined into the things that people use, and then it's got all this other stuff. Within all this other stuff is ethane. Ethane used to be a byproduct of the refining process and was simply flared out for years. Until someone goes, you know what we can do with that ethane? I bet you we can make stuff with it. And so these refineries, not only are they creating the ethane, but they're also creating the toxic emissions that are damaging fence line and environmental justice communities. So now that we have all this ethane, it is now being piped across the United States, again in pipelines, that pose the same sort of threats to land and to health, to ethane crackers, which is, think of a refinery on steroids. The ethane cracker takes these large ethane chains and breaks them down into individual plastics components, ones that can be built into the thousands upon millions of different products that you can get. These ethane crackers pose the same threat that refineries do to the communities in which they're built, and they are now being built throughout Appalachia and the Gulf Coast for us to be exporting more and more raw plastic products out of the United States to other countries. What the ethane cracker creates then is these little plastic nurdles. Google plastic nurdles. I kid you not, they're nurdles. And these things are bagged up in these massive bags. I like to think of them just like coffee beans that are being in burlap bags, except they're plastic beans putting in plastic bags. And they're shipped around the world, exported mostly to the United States to other countries to create the packaging and the products that we buy, imported back into the United States for us to then use it for about 35 seconds, and then either toss in the recycling bin or in the garbage, where, once again, as Terry said, it's never gone away. And at each one of these steps, there's a threat to the environmental and human health, from the point of natural gas extraction to whether it's in plastics in the ocean. At each point, there's a threat there. So I guess my point, once again, is that we're at the tail end of a system. And in this case, we're talking about the potential of the tail wagging the dog. And I think there is a possibility for us to do this. And mostly because I believe we can build a better future. I think we can build something better than this. We don't have to settle for just because this was created, that we have to live with it forever. Our consumption habits and patterns can create demand for something different. And 10,000 individual actions that we all can take will have real-world consequences. And if you haven't heard of the Center for International Environmental Law, I would encourage you to go and look out some of the research they've done. What they have undoubtedly proven is that it's not consumer demand for disposable, single-use convenience that's led us to this. The supply came first. The stuff was created, and then we were taught that we want what they are creating. And so, to me, that means that we're living in someone else's world. We're living in a world that somebody else thought up because they wanted to sell this. And then we were taught that this is the form of consumption that we need, and that is the form of consumption that we want. And so if this world is the product of somebody else's imagination, that means the next world can be the product of ours. And that, they dreamed of that complacent consumption. It's that plastic cup on an airplane that you didn't say no to, putting a straw in your drink at a bar out of habit, or the 17 ketchup packets at the bottom of the bag. Let's make those scenarios where we have that complacent consumption, that unnecessary plastic, let's make that weird. Let's make that unnormal. Let's make it so that the person who gets their coffee, drinks it, and then cleans the dish, that's the norm. How do we make that the value that we are going to live by? And if you want your 17 packets of ketchup, by George, go ahead and just ask someone for it. Don't make it normal for it just to be given to you. We can create something different, and it doesn't begin with this task force. It began long ago, and it's not going to end in this room. We have to give everything the time that it deserves to create the world that we want. To bring us back to where I started, there's a better way. The world doesn't need to be filled with this sterile and nondescript, known to be harmful single-use items. Every consumer and business problem that plastic has solved can be addressed in a completely different way. We need only to imagine it so that then we can create it. And bringing that vision to reality is the foundation on which our economy and which our entrepreneurial spirit is built. Let's unleash that creativity and find new, better, and more interesting ways for us to solve the problem of how do I get my coffee from the coffee maker to my mouth. That seems like a fun problem to solve, and it doesn't need a plastic cup to do it. So, just going to pick on a couple of them, and I know I'm already longer than I wanted to, but I'm almost done. And so I want to express how much that new world is already emerging around us. It's being brought to us by the forward-thinking companies and the industries that see the changing trends and are embracing new values within our society. For example, the Freiburg Cup, up there at the top. It came out of an effort by a single city to replace disposable coffee cups. With one push by the mayor, and 4 months, and only 4 months, a private company rolled out this cup after public meetings with cafes and residents. It's a voluntary system, and it's an operation in a majority of the coffee shops in Freiburg, Germany. Consumers use it for the to-go coffee. Hey, I want to get my coffee to go. Thanks for putting it in this cup. I drink my coffee, I can take it back to any other participating location. They rinse, wash, and repeat. Each use is saving the cafes money because they're not giving out free disposable cups. I know the here we go, sorry. Hospitality industry, once again, I recognize every time I travel a fair amount for this work. I've been to Houston, I've been to Appalachia, I've been out to California. This is one of the things I do, is I'm going out and seeking these stories and these experiences to knit together that perspective of where are we at. I stay in a lot of hotels. And hotels are a captive audience that teaches us that there can be a different way as well. Each time that I go, whether it's a reuse your towel, or turn off the water, or look at that soap dispenser in the shower rather than single-use bottles. Each one of those is a moment where it's teaching a consumer, a traveler, to expect something different for the next place that they go to. Each one of those is an opportunity to build that vision into the mind of a traveler and into the mind of a consumer to continue to demand and expect things from the people that they buy services from and buy products from. And finally, for those of you who don't know the Aussie, it's just down in East Greenwich. And they're even more ambitious, and they're just down in our backyard. It's a company that's taking institutional dining to new places. Universities, corporate cafeterias, go down and down the line. I mean, think of like a college student that's going for that late night meal. 11:30 at night, dining hall closes at 12. They're like, I really want to take this back to my dorm to, eat and study. Yeah, study. We'll go study. I can't sit here, but I want it to go. And what they can do is take a reusable thing, take a reusable plate. It's like a little polypropylene, I don't know the details. To-go cup, to-go container. They put a deposit down on their student card as when they buy it. They go and eat their thing, and the next time they come back to the dining hall, because I assume they're going to eat tomorrow, they put it in a reverse vending machine and get their deposit back. Boom, done. That's it. Now, don't get me started. There's some problems with the technology of the reverse vending machine. We can always improve, good for people, and there's no perfect answer. But that right there is teaching a college student, like, hey, I don't have to dine on takeout. Like the takeout that I get doesn't have to be disposable every day. A future that's free of this disposability is all around us. And the question is whether we're seeing it or whether we want to replicate it. And so And once again, the industries that are there are the industries that are there are the ones that are going to lead us to that different future. It's not me that's going to lead us to a different future. And no offense to everyone in government in the room, it's not a policy or a law that's going to lead us to a different future. It is the businesses, it is the restaurants, it is the hotels, it is the cafes, that as they see we can do things better, we can do things different, they're the ones that are going to expand our experience, and they're the ones that are going to hear from us when we say, that's awesome, I want more of that, I'm going to keep coming back. But we need guideposts along the way. We need to learn from errors, we need to share best practices, we need to codify values, what are we trying to accomplish and why, and we need to give honest directions. Those are roles that the rest of us get to play. And once again, I don't think there's one answer. I don't think there's one solution that we're then going to scale to the state or to the country that's going to solve all of the problems. It's a mythical beast in the forest, and when we harness that, we will have no more disposability, because we found the one way to solve all of these problems, and it was plastic. So if we seek one solution, we'll come back to that. Because it's the only way that we've heard of that can solve every one of these problems in a magical, mythical way. So we need the 10,000 solutions. We need the solutions to be as diverse as our communities, the ideas, and the people's experiences that are there. We need to create the spaces where the cycle can be broken. We can uplift the diversity of those voices. And we can look to those places that are pioneering new models and taking on ambitious efforts to make the change that we need. So activists nurture that desire and establish the need for something better. Academics make us understand the impact of our actions. Government codify our decisions, point us in the right path, set goals, and hold us to measuring them. And to the businesses, you're our hero. You're the one that's going to lead us to a different future. So I can't tell you what you need to do when you leave this room. And yes, Upstream has its projects. We're going to seek to expand the places where you go that there's no throwaway around you, building those throwaway-free places. We want to build more community reusable and refill systems, whatever that takes. And we even want to harness the power of media to have everybody connected around this desire to both express something different and to deliver something different. We want to give voice to that demand. But that's me. It's going to take all of you to change Rhode Island. I'm here to help, and I'll give all of myself to making this happen. But I just have ideas that are as crazy as yours on how to do this, and we need to see them through. But to end, of course, I have to give you cute pictures of my kids to evoke some sort of emotional connection to me. Put that in. Here it is. But I think it's also important for us to remember why we're doing this. And I don't think a lot of you are here just because the boss told you to be. I think you're here because this is something that you want to see, or something that you believe in, or something that you're afraid of and want to influence. And you just like my kids that have learned to unlock my iPhone before they could talk. They are the ones that are going to actually build this future. They're going to build this future. So let's make it interesting. Let's inspire them. It's not just about leaving them a better world. It's having them help us build a better, more interesting world that reflect the values that we have. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks. Did you catch it? You make me nervous there? No.